You've tried being kind. You've tried rising above. You've tried giving second chances to people who memorized how to weaponize them. And now, you're tired. Not just physically, existentially. This isn't a guide. This is a dismantling of false forgiveness, of emotional parasites, of every quiet apology you swallowed like glass. If you've ever sat in the aftermath of a conversation and felt filth on your spirit, if you've ever walked away from someone but still heard them whisper inside your bones, you're not broken. You're just waking up. And I'm not here to motivate you. I'm here to hand you the tools for psychological war, one by one. No mercy, no crowd, just you and the part of yourself that's done pretending. Section 1. The citadel was never empty. You ever feel like you've been holding your breath for years? Not gasping, not drowning, just suspended. Like something's been watching you from behind your own eyes. Waiting. Not a monster, not a savior. Something older. You weren't born soft. That was fed to you. Trained into you with praise, guilt, family dinners, be nice looks, and the rusted barbed wire of expectations. But deep under that mess, there's a citadel. Yeah, your citadel. And it was never empty. They lied when they said you were too sensitive. They lied when they said you had to forgive. They lied when they said silence meant weakness. Because that silence, that's where the walls were forming. You thought the numbness was weakness. It wasn't. It was insulation. Pressure builds in quiet places. So does strength. Some nights maybe you thought you were going crazy. Lying there, staring at the ceiling, feeling like you were surrounded, but couldn't point to a single enemy. But that's the trick, isn't it? They don't show up in masks. They show up in smiles. They call you brother. They say, I love you. And they leak poison into your life so slow, you thank them for it. You didn't miss the signs. You ignored them. Because breaking things felt worse than bleeding. But listen, the man you were before, he isn't gone. He's locked in that citadel pacing. Still, sane, sick of waiting. You want to know what's crazy? You built this fortress during your most broken moments. While pretending, while pleasing, while quietly hating yourself for not walking away sooner. It's not weakness that brought you here. It's durability. It's obsession. It's the insane idea that maybe, just maybe, if you held out long enough, someone would finally see what it cost you to smile. They didn't. But I see it now. And you do too. You weren't overreacting. You weren't imagining it. You've been under siege. Every boundary crossed like a whisper in a church. Every insult wrapped in just joking. Every apology that came too late or never came at all. And through all of it, you kept the citadel. Behind every nod, behind every, it's fine. You kept it. So let me ask you something. And answer this only if it burns. What's still hiding behind your walls that you've never told anyone? Yeah, let that sit. Because what comes next? It isn't healing. It isn't peace. It's war. And it starts by unlocking the doors. Very, very quietly. Without telling anyone you've returned. Not yet. Section 2. Predators wear perfume. They don't hiss. They smile. Offer you tea. Tell you you're strong. Right before pulling the pin and handing you the grenade. No warning. No blood on their hands. Just your mess to clean up. And somehow you're apologizing for bleeding. That's the thing they never say. Monsters don't growl. They whisper. And the most dangerous ones? They smell like comfort. They feel like home. You ever shake someone's hand and feel something twist in your stomach, but you ignore it? Because they were charming. Because they were nice. Because you've been trained to doubt your own senses. Because that's what gets you caught. They don't come at you with knives. They come with stories. They come broken. They come soft. They make you the villain for noticing, for pulling back, for setting limits. They say you're cold, unforgiving, selfish. And maybe, for a while, you believed them. I did too. I kept letting them in. Because they cried when they talked about their past. Because they remembered my favorite coffee. Because they sent check-in texts at 2 a.m. Because I thought love meant bending. Until my spine didn't come back straight. But here's what I know now. Some people feed on empathy, like it's blood. And if you're wired to care, you're meat. Not because you're weak, because you're rare. They can spot that light in your chest, and they don't want to heal. They want to bask in it, then drain it, slow, like a leaking IV line. So slow, you start confusing emptiness with peace. Let's call them what they are. The narcissist, always starving, never satisfied. Praises you when you're useful, discards you when you're not. You'll think you're special. You're not. You're just next. The victim strategist. Everything happens to them. Nothing is their fault. But their chaos always finds your doorstep. They cry while stabbing you and say you made them do it. The emotional puppeteer. Guilt is their religion. They hand you their sadness, like it's your job to fix it. And if you drop it, they shatter and make the pieces your responsibility. And the gossip dealer. Information is currency, yours especially. They listen like a friend and reload like a sniper. Smile at your secrets, then sell them. But here's the most brutal part. They don't always know they're doing it. They've just survived so long in manipulation, they forgot how to breathe in truth. So what does that make you? A fool? Or just tired of hoping someone would treat you the way you never demanded? Let me ask you something real. Not for them. For you. When did you start shrinking yourself just to be allowed in the room? Be honest in the comments, or don't. But you'll feel it either way. You know the worst part? You were never afraid of being alone. You were afraid of finally seeing them for what they were, and having no excuse to stay. So now you sit with that, quiet, awake, and you smell it, don't you? Under the perfume, under the sweetness, that rot. That's not your guilt. That's the truth finally getting air. Let it. But don't forgive it. Not yet. Section 3. The myth of reaction. They told you to speak up. Fight back. Don't let them get away with it. But they never asked what it costs to keep swinging. Nobody talks about the man who reacts to everything. How drained he becomes. How predictable. How easy to control. That's the trick, isn't it? They press your buttons just to prove they still work. And you keep giving them the code. Every sigh, every glare, every well-crafted comeback. Proof that they still live inside your nervous system. They don't want to win. They want you dancing. Tethered to their script. Bleeding energy, while they smile politely from a safe distance. Like chess masters playing with ghosts. And here's what they'll never admit. You're more useful when you're angry. Louder. Easier to frame. Easier to dismiss. You think your fire scares them? It feeds them. And still, you defend yourself. Over and over and over. Until you start forgetting who you were before everything became a courtroom. But reaction isn't power. It's performance. And it's rigged. See? Silence. That's where the real danger lives. The look they can't decode. The stillness they can't provoke. The man they can't manipulate. They call it cold. They call it cruel. They say you've changed. Good. Let them. There's a kind of strength that doesn't flinch, doesn't justify, doesn't entertain, and it doesn't play by their tempo. You feel it when you stop replying, not just in texts, in thought, in investment. You watch them scramble to find your edges, but you don't have edges anymore. Just still water. Black mirror. No reflection for them to feed off. Let me say something brutal. And if it hits, leave it where I can find it later. What would happen if you stopped reacting for a full month? Not one defense, not one explanation, not one drop. You already know. Say it in the comments if you've lived it. Because that's not silence, that's warfare. And the thing is, they can't fight what won't fight back. They can only watch it disappear. And by the time they notice, you're gone. Not physically, just where it counts. Section 4. Make yourself boring to their hunger. They feed on color, emotion, movement, spark. It's not always violence they want. Sometimes it's applause, sometimes confusion, but always, always, your energy. They sniff it out like blood in the water. That ache behind your eyes, that twitch in your jaw when you're trying to hold back. They love that. It tells them you're still chewable. And I know what you're thinking. If I stay kind, maybe they'll stop. If I explain it just right, maybe they'll see. But that's not how it works. They don't want peace. They want proof. Proof they still matter. Proof you still feel. So stop giving them flavor. Starve them. Let them taste static. Become something they can't bite. Not hard, not mean. Just dull, unreactive, gray. No spice, no edge, no tears, no defense, no carefully phrased boundaries. Just facts and dead air. Let them insult you. Tell them that's possible. Let them corner you with drama. Say, noted, then walk. No explanation, no elevation, no drama of your own. Only dust where your rage used to be. It'll drive them mad. Because here's the truth nobody writes on coffee mugs. The less you feed them, the more they show their teeth. They'll escalate, get louder, meaner. They'll accuse you of being distant, robotic, fake. They'll say you used to care. Good. Let them. Every accusation is just hunger. A starving child in an adult body, throwing a tantrum because the machine stopped dispensing sugar. And you? You finally unplugged the vending machine. You're not punishing them. You're protecting you. No more tears for people who eat them. No more spark for someone who worships smoke. You become quiet, consistent. You become nothing. And it will be the most powerful thing you've ever done. But hey, let's make it real. Who's the one person who loses their grip when you stop reacting? Say it below if it feels like an exorcism, or just mouth their name in the dark. Either works. Because this part isn't about being strong. It's about being unappetizing. You don't need to be feared, just forgotten. By the ones who only saw you as fuel. Let their hunger turn somewhere else. Let them starve. And you? You go silent. You go still. You go gray. Until they can't remember what you ever tasted like. Section 5. The broken record isn't broken. It's unbeatable. They hate it when you stop negotiating. They don't mind a fight. They don't mind your anger. They'll even tolerate silence for a while. But repeat yourself once, twice, 3 times, in the exact same tone. Now you're dangerous. Because the moment you stop explaining and start repeating, you've left the script. You're not playing anymore. You're protecting. And nothing terrifies manipulators more than someone who's immune to persuasion. They call it stubborn. I call it sacred. They say you're difficult, but they just can't steer you anymore. Your wheel is locked. Your voice, flat. Your line, clear. No new words, no footnotes. Just the same sentence again and again. until the conversation dies from starvation. See, it's not that they didn't hear you. It's that they need to believe you can be worn down. Need to believe there's a version of you that folds if they just talk long enough, cry loud enough, twist smart enough. And maybe there was. Once. Before the switch flipped. Before you realized that clarity isn't cruelty, it's mercy, disguised as a fence post. Because boundaries don't beg, they don't yell, they don't prove their logic. They stand, like a record that skips on truth, over and over. I'm not available for that. I'm not available for that. I'm not available for that. Same tone, no spikes, no bait taken. Let them freak out. Let them ramp up. Your job isn't to de-escalate, it's to not move. Because once you give an inch, they'll bury the knife right where you bent. So you stop bending. And that stillness, it becomes unbearable to them. Like screaming into fog, like punching water. They'll call you broken. But broken things don't repeat like that. Broken things shatter. You didn't. You looped. You turned your pain into programming. You became a locked gate with no handle. And they hate that. They hate that they can't debate it, can't guilt it, can't cry their way around it. Because it's not a conversation anymore. It's a recording. And it doesn't respond to emotion. You ever tried it? One sentence, one tone, over and over, until they walk away first. If you have, leave it below. Word for word. I want to see how clean your blade is. The best part, you don't need to win. You just need to repeat. And let them get bored. Let them get loud. Let them leave. Because once you realize a broken record isn't broken, just focused, you stop bleeding over explanations. And you start defending in code. Section 6. Don't take the hook. Starve the fisherman. There's a kind of silence that screams louder than rage. You know it. That moment when someone says the exact thing to light your fuse. But you just blink. Not dead. Not numb. Just uncatchable. Because you saw the hook this time and didn't bite. See? They never come swinging. They cast. Guilt. Sarcasm. Why are you being like this? Little wires wrapped in bait, shaped like love. And they wait, because that's what fishermen do. They don't chase you, they lure you. And if you're wired to fix, to defend, to explain, you're easy prey. They yank you into the boat and call it a conversation. But you're not talking. You're writhing, choking on the metal of your own emotional reflexes. That's the game. Get you to react. Because reaction means you're still hooked, still dancing, still edible. But what happens when you stop twitching? What happens when they reel in the line and find nothing on the other end but still water? You starve them. No flinch, no flash in your eyes, no witty response. Just that still stare. That grounded quiet that says, not today. And yeah, it burns. Because every instinct in you wants to correct the lie, wants to fire back, wants to prove them wrong, wants to be understood. But you're not here to be understood. You're here to end the game. Because when you don't rise to it, when you just sit there and let the bait rot, you break the ritual, and they hate that. You ever seen a manipulator panic? Not scream, not cry, just glitch. Because their tools stop working. Their fishing line floats limp. Their spell breaks. And you're just sitting there, like you always were. Only now, they can't reach you. Not even with their best tricks. You know the moment I'm talking about. That one insult, that one jab, that one little tilt of the head that used to crack you wide open. And now, you just breathe and let it fall. That's power, not rage, not the comeback. Just choosing silence over sabotage. It's not about ignoring them. It's about making their bait irrelevant. You don't have to burn the boat. Just stop swimming toward it. And if this hits, tell me one line they always used to hook you. Yeah, that one. Drop it in the comments. Let someone else steal it from their abuser too. Because once you name the bait, you stop being hungry for it. And when they cast again, you don't even look. You've already vanished beneath the surface, where no line can reach. Section 7. Silence is a sword. Learn to cut without sound. You don't always win by speaking. Sometimes, you win by letting the room echo with the sound of your absence. Let them shout. Let them flail. Let them twist themselves into a story where they're always the victim and you're always supposed to respond. But you don't. Not anymore. Because you've learned the cut that doesn't bleed, just severs. Silence. Not avoidance, not fear, not shutting down, but surgical quiet. The kind that slices through the noise and leaves nothing but truth hanging in the air like smoke. They'll tell you, silence is weakness. Because they need it to be. Because the moment you stop reacting, you become unreadable, unshakable, untouchable. And that terrifies them. Because now they can't find your edges. And they need your edges. They need your voice, your apology, your explanation. Not to understand, but to control the rhythm. Without your voice, they can't dance. You ever sat in a room where someone was trying to provoke you, and all you did was breathe? That breath, that stillness, was a weapon sharper than anything you could have said. Because now they're yelling into a mirror. They look down, expecting blood. But the cut was clean, internal, precision work. They'll call it passive aggression. They'll say you're stonewalling. They'll beg for communication. But what they really want is access, and silence denies it. Silence says, you don't get to shape my tone anymore. You don't get a reaction on demand. You don't get a theater when I've burned the stage. Let it eat at them. Let them drown in their own static. You don't need to explain a damn thing. You already showed them. By leaving the room before you stood up. Because silence, when it's chosen, ends worlds. They feel it in their gut. They hear it in the replay of your missing voice. They keep calling into a canyon that doesn't echo back. And you're already gone. Not out of the house, out of the game. You ever done that? Gone completely still while they escalated? Just watched? Let them burn through their script with no applause? If you have, leave a dot. Just a dot in the comments. I'll know what it means. See? You don't need the last word. You don't need to win the debate. You need to disappear inside yourself long enough for them to lose track of the map. Because when the enemy can't hear you, they can't hunt you. They panic, they chase, they guess, and they fall apart. While you sit there, clean, closed, sharp, not hiding, cutting, without saying a word. Section 8. Limit contact, like it's radiation. Not all poison kills you quick. Some of it just sits in the air, invisible, polite, smiling at your boundaries while it erodes the lining of your peace. You breathe it in, a little here, a little there, a conversation you didn't want, a phone call you answered out of guilt, a presence you tolerated because they didn't mean it like that. But your nervous system knows. Your hands clench, your shoulders raise half an inch, and somewhere inside, something curls up tighter. Again, that's radiation, and they are leaking it, constantly, through small talk, through silence, through obligation. You've been standing too close to it for years, and the damage didn't show up all at once. It showed up in doubt, in fatigue you blamed on sleep, in shame you didn't earn, in that low-grade hum of self-hate you carry. Like background music, you were contaminated, and you still are. until you start counting exposure like it matters more than approval. Let that settle. You don't have to cut them off with fireworks. Just start measuring. Limit the dose. Step back. 3 minutes less. Then 5. Then suddenly you're not available tonight, or tomorrow, or this version of you, the one they were feeding on. There's no moral badge for staying accessible. No redemption in proximity. Just a slow decay of your own clarity. You're not here to save them. You're not here to keep the peace when the peace is costing you your spine. You ever felt that? That moment when they call and your gut clenches like it knows before your mind catches up? That's your body remembering the burn. Don't ignore it. Listen. Step out of range. They won't notice it first. Toxic people rarely do. They're used to being the sun in someone else's sky, even when they burn, especially when they burn. But over time, they'll feel the cold, and you'll feel clean. Not safe, not healed, but clean. You'll have space, and in that space, your thoughts will return to their original frequency, not calibrated to their chaos, not softened to fit their drama. Yours, all yours. So let me ask something sharp. If you tracked your exposure to them like radiation, what would your dosage chart look like? Write it down somewhere, or drop a single number in the comments. Hours per week, then cut it in half. And if they scream, let them. If they accuse you of ghosting, of changing, of being distant, good. You didn't change. You remembered who you were before they got too close, before you absorbed their static and wore it like your own shadow. This isn't revenge. This isn't war. It's survival. Because you can't heal in the blast zone. And they were always glowing. But you kept pretending it was just a warm light. Section 9. Build a phalanx, not a friend group. You don't need more people. You need shields. There's a difference. Friend groups are built on birthday invites, group chats, surface-level rituals, noise, validation wrapped in convenience. But a phalanx? A phalanx moves with you, takes hits for you, stands beside you when it gets quiet and rotten and real. That's not a friendship. That's a formation. And if you've ever bled alone, if you've ever reached out mid-collapse and heard nothing but polite delays, you already know the difference. The ones you drink with? They vanish when the glass shatters. But the ones who sit with you, in silence, in ruin, without fixing, without flinching, those are rare. Rare enough to test. Rare enough to keep. Rare enough to protect back. I don't care how many contacts are in your phone. I care who answers when you say, "I'm not okay, but I don't want to explain it." And they just say, "Cool, I'm here." That's a shield. That's iron in the cold. That's someone who doesn't need your mask to love your face. See, a phalanx isn't built by popularity. It's built by pain, shared, survived, revealed, one scar at a time. You don't recruit them. You recognize them. They're the ones who noticed your silence shift before you said a word. The ones who didn't cheer you up when you were broken. They just made space at the table. And if you're sitting there thinking, "I don't have that," you're not wrong. Most people don't. Because most people never had to earn their people. They settled for warmth over weight. And now they're surrounded by spectators. But you've earned the right to build slow. Not a crowd, a code. People who don't flinch when your darkness shows its teeth. People who hold you accountable without weaponizing your damage. People who'd rather stand with your shadow than laugh with your light. You get 2, 3 if you're lucky. That's all it takes to survive any war. So let me hit a nerve. Who would drag your body off the field, even if it meant taking a bullet on the way out? Say their name, one name, in the comments or in your chest. But say it like it's sacred. And if no one comes to mind, that's not shame. That's blueprint. You don't need 50 acquaintances. You need one wolf who growls when someone tries to touch your peace. So find them, test them, stand with them. And the rest? Let them go. Let them talk. Let them say you're cold, distant, paranoid. Because when it rains hard enough, you'll stop looking for umbrellas and start looking for men who link shields. Section 10. Self-care is not bubble baths, it's battlefield maintenance. They sold you candles, lavender playlists, morning routines with matcha foam and fake smiles. Told you that's what healing looks like. Software aesthetic. Pretty. But you're not soft. And what broke you sure as hell wasn't. Self-care, for you, is not about comfort. It's maintenance. It's checking the wounds no one claps for. It's sharpening the dull blade you've been dragging through months of chaos. It's sitting in the garage of your mind at 3 a.m., staring at the engine light flashing inside your chest, and finally saying, something's off. I know it. And I'm done pretending I don't. That's the work, not the pretty version, the real one. The version where you step into the shower and just stand there, not because you're relaxed, but because you're trying to remember what peace felt like before your body forgot. Some days it looks like pushing iron, not for strength, but just to feel solid. Other days it's walking through empty streets because silence is the only sound that doesn't lie to you. And sometimes it's eating like a soldier instead of starving like a ghost. It's going to bed like you matter. Getting sunlight not because you're inspired, but because your nervous system is begging for it. It's boring, it's gritty, it's unspectacular, but it's survival. You want beauty? Let them have their scented oils. You need blood tests. You need full system checks. You need to crawl out of your own habits and ask yourself, am I operating or just reacting? You ever had that moment where your body's still moving, but your soul's 3 exits behind? Yeah, that's the red light. That's the leak. That's the day you don't cancel your plans, you cancel yourself. Because you can't fake the energy anymore. So stop pretending this version of care is weakness. It's war prep. You're not here to glow. You're here to last. You're here to walk back into the fire that raised you wearing armor, made of everything they forgot to teach you. Sleep like it's sacred. Eat like you're still needed. Stretch like you're uncoiling 20 years of clenched grief. And walk. Not to escape, but to return to the place inside you that didn't stop when everything else did. So tell me something honest. What's the one thing you haven't done for yourself in months? Because you told yourself it didn't matter. Say it in the comments. Whisper it like a confession. Burn it like a prayer. Because it does matter. You matter. Not in the soft, sweet way, but in the way that machines need oil, that wolves need rest, that men like you need solitude with purpose. This isn't luxury, it's preservation, it's battlefield maintenance. Because the next time the world comes for you, and it will, you'll either have a sharpened blade or a cracked one. And you already know what it feels like to swing the latter. Section 11. Remember, it's never been about you. They didn't break you because you deserved it. They broke you because they were broken first. And they didn't know what to do with someone who didn't shatter the same way. Read that again. Slow. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't your weakness. It wasn't that you were too much or too quiet or too raw or too whatever the hell they needed you to believe. It was never about you. You were just the screen they projected it all onto. Their chaos, their wounds, their guilt they couldn't name, so they handed it to you like a mirror and said, "Look what you did." But the reflection never belonged to you. It still doesn't. That shame, not yours. That guilt, not yours. That slow drip narrative they kept whispering beneath their breath. The one that made you shrink every time you walked into a room they were in. It was camouflage, for their own fear, for the truth they'd never touch. And you were just easy to reach, because you cared, because you listened, because part of you still thought, if you just did enough, loved enough, softened enough, you could fix something you didn't break. But here's the truth. Nobody gives out for free. You don't fix poison. You leave it sealed, label it, back away, and live. The venom wasn't tailored to your veins. They just happened to bite the closest throat. Let that sting. Then, let it settle. You weren't a target. You were a surface. You just happened to be standing there when the wave hit. And yeah, some days it still feels like you asked for it. Because trauma doesn't always sound like screaming. Sometimes it sounds like a whisper that says, maybe if I was stronger, maybe if I hadn't said that, maybe I deserved it. But those are echoes, not facts. Ghosts, not gods. And now it's your job to stop dragging their story through your bloodstream, to stop carrying their name like it's carved on your skin. You ever notice that? How their voice still shows up in your decisions? How you check yourself against their standards even though they're long gone? That's not memory. That's infection. So ask yourself this. What belief about yourself still belongs to them, not you? Write it below. Write it like it owes you something. Because once you name it, you can kill it. And maybe one day, not today, not cleanly, you'll finally wake up, take one long breath, and realize none of this ever started in you, but ending it, that part's yours. Section 12. You're not their healer. Stop playing God. You were never built to save them. You just got good at bleeding next to them quietly. And somewhere along the way, you started calling that love. You gave them books, gave them options, gave them a mirror and begged them to look. And every time they didn't, you looked harder, as if staring long enough for both of you would somehow count. But it doesn't, because you can't drag someone out of a pit when they've carved furniture into the walls, when they've built a home in the bottom, when your rope starts fraying and they just say, pull harder. You ever feel that? Like you're doing CPR on someone who keeps holding their breath? You're not their healer. You're the distraction they use to avoid healing themselves. You became their crutch, their priest, their emotional garbage truck, and they loved you for it. Until they didn't. Until you asked for something back. Something small. Like consistency, or truth, or effort. And they called you controlling. They called you cold. They called you everything but done. Because gods don't get to be tired. They're supposed to show up, fix, forgive, repeat. But you're not divine. You're damaged. And if you don't stop now, you'll forget how to walk without carrying someone else's weight. You can't hold both of you. And even if you could, you're not supposed to. Here's the part that stings. You helped because it felt holy. Because they looked at you like you mattered when they were broken. But that wasn't love. That was worship. And worship always ends in resentment. For both of you. You ever been there? Sitting across from someone, explaining basic humanity like it's quantum physics, and wondering if you're insane or just exhausted? Yeah. That's the part where you stop. Where you hand them back their wounds and walk away with the quiet realization that empathy without boundaries is just self-harm in disguise. So, I'll ask you straight. Who are you still trying to fix, even after they showed you they don't want to change? Say their name in the comments if you're ready, or write it on a piece of paper and burn it. Same effect. You can care. You can hope. You can even leave a light on. But don't wait at the door forever. Don't rot next to someone who calls their poison a personality trait. Don't offer surgery to someone who thinks their wound makes them interesting. You're not cruel for letting them fall. You're just finally letting gravity do what you were never meant to hold back. That's not abandonment. That's release. That's surrender. That's walking away from the altar where you were always the only one praying. Section 13. Know when to burn the bridge and salt the earth. Some bridges aren't meant to be crossed. They're meant to be burned. With you standing on the edge, match in one hand, past in the other. And if you're honest, you've already lit it 100 times in your head. But still, you hesitate. Because you were taught that walking away makes you heartless, selfish, immature, the villain. But what if the real cruelty is staying? What if the real crime is you, dragging your own soul back across splinters every time they smile just right? They know how to pull you in. They know which wounds still bleed if pressed with the right voice. They don't even have to scream anymore. Now they just sigh, and you feel it. That old guilt twitch, that need to explain. But some people aren't coming with you, and they're not meant to. They weren't built for the version of you that no longer asks for permission. There's no nice way to leave the people who profited from your silence. So you stop apologizing. You burn the bridge, not out of hate, but clarity. And if you're going to burn it right. No slow fade, no ghosting, no back door left cracked. You burn, then you salt. So nothing grows there again. No, maybe one day. No, we'll talk again, when you're less angry. No reunion fantasy you rewatch in your head at 2:17 a.m. Salt the earth. Make it final. Not to punish them, but to free yourself. Because healing doesn't happen in doorways. And you've been standing in this one for too long. Half inch, half gone, half alive. You don't need closure. You need distance. They'll tell stories about you. Let them. They'll rewrite history. Let them. You're not here to manage their narrative. You're here to protect your name inside your own bones. And if that costs you the connection, good. Some things deserve to be severed. Some memories deserve smoke. Some chapters don't need endings, just fire. So I'll ask you what no one else has the guts to. Who have you been keeping alive in your life out of guilt, not love? Drop a single letter. 1. The first letter of their name. In the comments. Let it rot there. Because when you finally leave, the ground shakes. Not because they lost something, but because you finally remembered who the hell you are without them. And nothing grows in the ash unless you choose to plant it. So burn it, salt it, turn your back so hard you forget the way back. And never, never go looking for the smoke. Section 14. Forgive yourself for staying too long. You knew. Long before the final lie. Long before the loud apologies and the quiet betrayals. Long before the voice inside you grew hoarse from whispering, "Get out." You knew, and you stayed anyway. That's the wound you don't talk about. Not the damage they did, but the time you gave them to keep doing it. That's the part that rots in your ribs. That slow, quiet shame. The weight that doesn't cry out, just leans. Every time you remember how many chances you gave, how many warnings you ignored, how many times you explained their behavior to your own bones. But listen, you didn't stay because you were weak. You stayed because you believed in their potential, in the future you built in your head, in the version of them that showed up on good days, the version that only ever lived in the cracks between your boundaries. You thought, if you just held steady long enough, if you bent far enough, you'd finally reach the version of them they swore was coming. And maybe you almost did, but almost doesn't hold weight when you're bleeding. And now you carry this guilt like a secret badge, as if your heart was a mistake, as if loyalty was a flaw. But let me ask you something brutal. If you had left earlier, would you have believed it was the right choice? Or would you have looked back, hoping they'd changed without you? Because sometimes the staying isn't weakness. It's evidence, a final case file for your own heart to review. Proof that you tried, that you stayed through the storm long enough to know it wasn't passing. You needed that clarity, even if it cost you time, even if it cracked something in you that hasn't quite healed yet. Forgiveness isn't softness, it's release. It's standing in the rubble of what you allowed and saying, I get it now, and I don't hate myself for not getting it sooner. You don't owe yourself a punishment. You owe yourself a return, back to the man you were before you learned to abandon yourself, so someone else could feel whole. You stayed too long. Okay, now leave all the way. And when that voice comes up at 3:41 a.m., the one that says, you were so stupid for loving them that hard. Don't argue. Don't drown it in affirmations. Just say, maybe. But I'm not anymore. Then turn over and sleep like someone who finally closed the door. So here's your last bleed. What's the moment you knew it was over, but stayed anyway? Speak it below. One sentence, one scar. That's enough. This isn't about forgetting. It's about finally letting go of the version of you who kept waiting by the door. He didn't fail you. He just didn't know you'd survive without them. But you did. And you are. And now, you forgive. Not for them. For you. So you can stop dragging your past behind you like a coffin. Burn the guilt and walk the hell away. Section 15. Darkside Demeanor was built for this. This place wasn't made for the healed. It wasn't made for the loud, or the fixed, or the ones who already know how to breathe without shaking. Darkside Demeanor was built in the aftermath, in the silence after the scream, in the hallway where no one waits, in the moment you finally realize you don't want comfort, you want clarity. This isn't motivation, it's confession. From one man who bled too long in the wrong rooms, to another who finally stopped pretending he deserved to. You ever feel like your strength is ugly? Like it's too quiet to be impressive? Too numb to be heroic? Good. That means it's real. Because real strength doesn't post about it. It walks around with history in its eyes and says nothing. It makes the coffee, pays the bill, washes the blood from its own hands without asking for applause. You're here because something in you refused to die. Even when it begged to. Even when the voice in your head turned into a judge, then a ghost, then a weapon. And you stayed. Not soft, not kind, just here. That's why this exists. Not for the masses, not for the clapping. For you, the quiet one, the loyal one. The one who knows what it costs to feel everything and still show up like it's nothing. This place is not a brand. It's a rebuild site, a quiet rebellion. For men who got tired of being mirrors, masks, and medicine for people who never stayed long enough to learn their names. Darkside Demeanor is what happens when the mask slips, and you don't panic. You breathe. It's what happens when the silence becomes a sanctuary, not a sentence. So listen, if something in this left a mark on you, if even one line in all of this felt like it knew your blood, leave it behind. One word, one scar, one truth you've never said out loud. Drop it in the comments. Or don't. Because this isn't about visibility. It's about witness. You don't have to prove anything here. You just have to remember that you were never broken. You were built for exactly this. To disappear, reconstruct, and return with silence sharp enough to cut through everything that tried to own you. So go now. Quiet, solid, dangerous. And when they ask where the softness went, tell them it joined the dead parts and buried them clean.